If you think falling home prices would automatically make everyone rich, you have not understood the game. You have been trained to believe the rules are neutral, that markets behave like gravity, and that work hard is the whole story. In reality, housing is not just where you live, it is where your future gets harvested, quietly, and on purpose. This is not financial advice, this is financial education. And if you are watching this in 2026, you are probably already feeling the pressure. Your job might be getting squeezed by AI systems that do the work cheaper and faster. Your salary might have risen on paper while your purchasing power quietly drained away since 2019. And meanwhile, the rent keeps climbing like a subscription you can never cancel. Most people are not losing money because they are reckless. They are losing money because the system is designed like a transfer from working people to asset owners. Today you are going to hear the uncomfortable logic behind why housing stays expensive even when everyone claims affordability is the goal. You will see how rent, mortgages, interest rates, zoning, taxes, and central bank policy combine into a machine that moves wealth upward. And you will understand why the idea that you can opt out by waiting for prices to crash is usually a comforting lie, not a plan. First, let us kill the fairy tale. You already know it in your bones even if nobody said it out loud. The fairy tale goes like this. Governments want you to have a home. Banks want to lend responsibly. So if you cannot afford the house right now, the rational solution must be that the system will let you catch up, lower the down payment, stretch the mortgage, reduce the interest rate, support demand until you finally win. That story sounds kind. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like progress. But the moment you look at the numbers, it starts to rot. If a household has $200,000 and the house costs $1 million, and someone tells them the bank will loan you $800,000 and you just pay gradually, what is actually happening? On the surface, the bank is helping, but underneath, the bank is turning future labor into present asset value. And here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. If the system truly wanted most people to own homes, the simplest move would be to make homes cheaper. Not complicated, not clever, just cheaper. But in the real world, governments do not usually compete by lowering asset prices. They compete by protecting asset prices. Because asset prices are power. Asset prices are tax revenue. Asset prices are collateral. Asset prices are political leverage. So instead of lowering the price of housing, the system sells you a different deal. It shifts your problem from I can't buy to I can buy, but I must live with debt longer. It swaps cash for credit. It swaps affordability for financing. And once you are inside that financing cage, your income becomes predictable to the people who own the cage. Now think about 2026. The Federal Reserve is not running a charity. When the Fed signals higher for longer, your mortgage rate does not just move on a chart. It moves into your kitchen. It raises the monthly payment, and it forces younger buyers to stay renters longer. If the Fed cuts rates later, your monthly payment might drop slightly, but the house price may not drop with it. That is because the cut often helps investors and existing owners refinance or bid more aggressively, which supports prices again. Markets do not wait for your budget, they react to whoever has the capital. In 2025 and 2026, interest rate talk became a daily weather report for housing. People watched the news like it was a stock ticker for their personal life. The central bank may cut, which means mortgage rates will fall, which means now is the best time to buy. But ask yourself a harder question. If prices are still out of reach, why is the best time to buy always just one moving deadline away? This is where the first pattern interrupt matters. When rates go down, borrowing becomes easier. When borrowing becomes easier, demand rises. When demand rises, prices rise. And then you get trapped believing the next wave of cuts will solve it forever. It never does. It just keeps the machine running. To feel this clearly, picture a nurse. Her name is David's partner. Let us call her Maya. Maya is 32, working nights in a hospital where the shifts feel more automated every year because scheduling software and AI diagnostics keep improving. Her income has gone up, but not as fast as groceries, childcare, and utilities. She has been saving for a down payment, but inflation keeps touching everything. She finally has $200,000 saved, maybe from years of tight budgeting. Then she finds the house. It is $1 million. She can do the math, but she also knows the math hurts. Her lender offers a mortgage that stretches her monthly payment like taffy. The bank says it is manageable. She agrees because she wants security. She wants stability. She wants to stop paying a landlord for something she can at least control. Now here is the dark twist. Even if her monthly payment feels manageable, the system is not designed for her to escape. The bank is designed to extract 30 years of predictable payments. That predictability is an asset. The mortgage is a stream of income that financial institutions can bundle, trade, and use as collateral. It is not just a loan, it is a product that turns your lifetime earnings into a durable revenue engine. And when your payment is tied to your wage, you cannot take the full risk of entrepreneurship. You cannot take the full risk of switching jobs. You cannot take the full risk of moving cities to find better work. Debt makes your life narrower. It does not just finance a home, it limits your options. So if you are angry, you are not crazy. You are reacting to a system that converts your survival into someone else's wealth. But that is still not the whole problem. Because even if the monthly mortgage payment feels like security, the asset side of the deal can still be manipulated. And in 2026, manipulation does not need secret rooms. It can be legal, it can be zoning, it can be taxation, it can be underwriting standards, it can be political incentives, it can be interest rate policy, it can be the simplest human behavior of all, protecting what you already own. This leads to the second pattern interrupt. People keep repeating the official explanation for why housing is expensive. Land is scarce, supply is limited, population grows, therefore prices rise. That sounds logical because it is partially true, but it is also the perfect distraction. Scarcity arguments hide control mechanisms. Let us bring it down to street level. In many major Western cities, there is still land that could be developed. Not every city is Paris or Manhattan. There are plenty of plots, plenty of underused areas, plenty of bureaucratic friction. Yet new housing supply does not keep pace. Why? Because the people who benefit from high asset prices often have influence over the rules. In the United States, zoning restrictions and permitting delays can act like a valve. They do not remove land, they delay the transformation of land into homes. In Canada, urban boundaries and restrictive density rules can cap where development is allowed. In Australia, metropolitan growth boundaries can push building outward while keeping prime areas expensive. In the United Kingdom, planning constraints can keep affordable housing as a perpetual slogan rather than a guaranteed outcome. And here is the mechanism most people miss. Governments and insiders can reduce effective supply not just by banning construction, but by controlling when land is brought to market. It is like running a restaurant where you have plenty of empty tables, but the owner keeps them closed because demand looks good. Then the owner claims the restaurant is full, naturally, so prices must be high. You are paying for the scarcity they enforce, not the scarcity they cannot control. Now connect this to 2026. Climate risk is increasing. Insurance costs are spiking in flood zones, wildfire regions, and hurricane corridors. Some areas become uninsurable, which effectively makes them less sellable. Migration patterns shift, and construction costs rise due to labor shortages and supply chain turbulence. When you add these pressures to an already restricted housing pipeline, prices can stay elevated even when everyone begs for affordability. So when you hear, "it is just scarcity," remember that scarcity can be managed. And when scarcity is managed, prices become policy outcomes, not just market outcomes. But you still might be thinking, okay, maybe the rules protect existing owners. Still, shouldn't falling demand eventually force prices down? That is where the third pattern interrupt hits you. The system can keep prices from collapsing by changing the financial structure around the asset, not just the asset itself. In plain terms, housing becomes a financial product, not merely a place to live. When housing is treated like an investment vehicle, the goal becomes price stability for the balance sheets of lenders and funds. When homeowners struggle, the system often responds with refinancing, subsidies, or interest rate changes rather than direct price cuts. Not always, and not instantly. But when the political cost is high, institutions stabilize the asset class. And this is where mortgages become central. Banks do not need perfect borrowers if they have mechanisms to transfer ownership. In a typical mortgage structure, if the borrower cannot pay, the bank can foreclose, take the collateral, and then sell the property. That means the lender is not taking the same risk as the homeowner. The lender is taking a secured risk backed by a house asset that is, in many cases, legally difficult for the average person to reclaim once it is in the system. Now I want you to focus on the life cycle. A mortgage is often 30 years. For 30 years, a huge portion of your income becomes payment for an asset you do not fully control until the end. During that time, your labor supports a flow of capital upward. And because the mortgage is long-term and predictable, it becomes attractive to institutions that need stable returns. Then comes the acceleration. In periods when the interest rate environment improves, borrowers can qualify for larger loans, and that expands purchase power. More purchase power means more bidding. More bidding means higher prices. So even when rates fall, prices do not necessarily fall. They can rise because affordability improves via financing. And now the story gets darker. Because developers and major investors often do not require all the upfront capital that people assume. They can finance projects using debt. They can sell pre-construction units, collecting deposits that help fund construction before it is fully completed. Your deposit becomes their runway. Your mortgage becomes their revenue stream. Your long-term payments become their stability. This is the part where the game resembles something like Monopoly, but with legal paperwork and real bodies. The board is housing, the currency is debt, the hotels are properties. And the biggest advantage is not cleverness, it is ownership of the pieces that others must land on. Let us zoom out to the wealth concentration reality in 2026. Top wealth holders are not merely richer. They are positioned to buy assets when markets wobble. While you are trying to save for a down payment, they can take loans against existing holdings, sometimes at rates that are far cheaper than your mortgage. They can shift risk into structured vehicles. They can diversify across regions and currencies. And because wealth concentration is accelerating, there are fewer people bidding for homes, but the bidders who remain have more financial muscle. This is why the stock market can be near highs while you are drowning. It is not an accident. Asset prices can rise even as working people are squeezed, because asset owners derive income from asset prices, not from your paycheck. Now remember the question from the original fairy tale. If home prices crash, won't everyone get rich? Not everyone. In many historical cases, when housing crashes, the people who profit are not the renters, they are the buyers with capital. During down cycles, lenders get nervous and forced sellers appear. Investors and institutions can purchase with better terms, then refinance later when conditions improve. That is how wealth gets consolidated during panic. And to make this real, here is a micro story. Imagine a young couple in their late 20s in a major city. They plan to buy after waiting for a supposed correction. They believed the crash narrative. Then the crash did not come the way they expected. Prices did pause in certain quarters, sure, but the monthly payments stayed brutal because interest rates were still high, and because even modest price reductions were not enough. Meanwhile, inflation kept eating their savings. Their rent increased anyway because property taxes and insurance costs rose. They waited, then they got priced out. Again, the best time to buy moved. The window they thought would open stayed shut, but the institutions did not wait. They had access to credit lines, capital reserves, and risk management. When opportunities appeared, they bought. When the market recovered, they benefited again. The crash narrative did not create fairness. It created a buying window for those who already owned. Now we reach the third big escalation: retirement and the long con. In 2026, the retirement crisis is no longer hidden. Many pensions are underfunded. Social Security is stretched as populations age. Governments push retirement ages and reduce benefits or raise eligibility thresholds. Meanwhile, housing is often the largest store of household wealth for those who manage to buy. If your generation cannot buy, you do not just lose a lifestyle, you lose a major component of long-term financial security. So even if the system offers you a choice between renting and buying, it still restricts your wealth-building path. Renting means you pay someone else's mortgage, plus taxes, plus maintenance, plus risk premium. Buying means you take on 30 years of payments, plus interest rate risk, plus property tax risk, plus maintenance cost risk, plus the risk of being unable to sell at the right time. In both scenarios, the asset owners often win. And the reason is structural. The system has built a transfer mechanism where labor money becomes asset money. Now connect that to AI and jobs in 2026. AI is not just replacing tasks, it is compressing bargaining power. It is making productivity translate into fewer roles or lower demand for certain skill stacks. Even when jobs are not deleted instantly, the labor market becomes more precarious. For many people, this means more layoffs, more project-based contracts, or fewer stable promotions. If your career becomes more uncertain, debt becomes more dangerous. That is why the housing game hits differently now. The old script assumes stable employment, but in the AI disruption era, stability is weaker. Yet the system still encourages you to take on long-term obligations. It is like telling someone to build a house during a storm while markets debate whether the rain will stop next quarter. The obligations do not care about your optimism. Now let us discuss crypto, because people keep missing the bait. Crypto was sold as escape. No banks, no landlords, no gatekeepers. Freedom from the old system. In 2026, reality looks different. Regulation consolidated power. Exchanges became custodians. Institutional players bought large stakes. Banks and major financial institutions became intertwined with crypto rails through partnerships and custody services. The dream of decentralized wealth became another layer of centralized control.